You were not a virgin, he said with a tone of voice he knew would anger her. She had told him that he should be gentle in his choice of comments about the movie they were watching so as to not offend her desire to maintain the state of suspended disbelief that she used to enjoy the movie. He thought his comment was honest in how it pointed out the improbability of the characters reacting so flippantly to the circumstances in the scene, and he would make that comment to any person he watched the movie with. She told him that she was special to him and should be exempt from what he would say to just anyone. He had said he was special to her, and she should enjoy his commentary. She said that she should be more special to him than he was to her, because he had had sex before knowing her, and he was her first. His retort put her attention totally on him, and with emotional shock at his callous remark, she pressed stop on the remote control, halting the movie. "What?" he asked incredulously. "Of course I was a virgin," she said. "And I would still be if you didn't pressure me to have sex with you." "First of all," he said, "I did not pressure you or force you to. You chose to have sex with me. And if you say that I pressured you, then you are being needlessly delusional or just plain mean." "Now you know how it feels," she said, pressing play on the remote. He grabbed the remote and pressed stop. "I know I didn't pressure you into having sex. And I know I was a virgin," she said. "Look, if you didn't want to have sex with me, you didn't have to. I told you that I was fine looking for another relationship, but you wanted to remain together. So after waiting for 8 months, you consented to have sex. Don't make me out to be some kind of sex-crazed monster who trapped you in a relationship and forced you to have sex. You're right. I wanted to have sex with you too. Would have waited if you could have waited, but I wanted you to be my first." "But I wasn't your first," he said, as matter of fact. "Of course you were," she responded. "No, I wasn't. And I don't know why you want to keep up this charade," he said. "Because you were my first," she said, and tears began welling in her eyes. "Then why was there no blood? Come on. Do you think I'm a fool? If I was your first, then I would have broken your hymen, and it would have been painful and bloody." He could see her lower lip quivering, but he kept going. "You said you did not ride horses when you were younger, and you didn't do gymnastics. I even asked your mom if there was ever any action when you were younger that could have de-virginized you." "You what?" she yelled. "You heard me," he said. "How could you have done that?" "I had a curiosity, and so I asked the question. That's how things work," he said. "So you talk with my mother about our sex life?" she asked. "No," he said. I asked her about something that you were most likely lying about. But I was a virgin until you. He shook his head and said nothing. Her anger transmogrified back to sadness, and she stood up from the couch in tears and ran to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. He mumbled a sarcastic remark about how great this night was turning out, and grabbed another remote. He switched the input of the television from the DVD player to the cable signal. He flipped around channels for a few seconds and then shut the television off. He massaged his temple and forehead with his right hand while he closed his eyes. After a couple of deep breaths, he stood and went to her bedroom door. Knocking gently, he called to her. "Clara," he said. "Clara, I'm sorry." He tried to turn the doorknob, but it was locked. He sighed and listened to her sob for a moment. "I just want you to be honest with me." He placed his hand on the door frame and began to understand she would not open the door. He closed his eyes and bowed his head. Another deep breath. "All right," he said. "I'm sorry, and I'm going to go. You can call me or find me when you want to talk about it. And please know that I will be there for you." "Stephen Corrigan!" she yelled from inside the room. "I never want to see you again!" He nodded in defeat. He walked to the counter area between the small hallway and the galley kitchen. He wrote on a piece of paper, "Call me if you change your mind," and then opened the front door. He took one last look at her apartment, accepting that it would be in all probability the last time he would see it, and then he left. As he walked out to his car to drive back to his apartment, he figured this was expected given the events of the last few months. He opened his car door and sat. He closed the door and sat, thinking, brooding, for a moment. Since he had left the hospital, his life had steadily improved. He had been continually busy at work and felt a great sense of pride in that. He had not expected to get his first job at Technisar, but then again, he didn't even expect to get the interview, considering he stated clearly on his resume that he had voluntarily put himself into a mental hospital. They called him, though, and he went to the office and sat there wondering what was in store for him. He was given a series of tests to gauge his language skills, his grasp of mathematics, engineering, chemistry, abstract thinking, and interpersonal skills. After 3 hours, he was interviewed by 3 men, one from human resources, one from research and development, and one of the company's 5 vice presidents. He was told that he showed exceptional ability across the board with the exception of interpersonal skills. The human resources representative told him that such wide-stretching, high test scores were unprecedented, And so the Research and Development Department was contacted, however, placing someone who applied for an entry-level data processing position into R&D required the go-ahead from upper management. And so the nearest VP, on the recommendation from the president and the consensus from the other 4 vice presidents, arrived at the office to offer Stefan admission to their company and placement on one of their many research projects. He accepted the offer and immediately went to work on one of the most sought-after projects, the cure for cancer. He worked with groups, but always found his time spent with others to be less than productive. He would have his ideas swept aside and be left talking about another person's idea, which he could tell was faulty or flawed. He would sheepishly voice his opinion and then reluctantly do the work, just to prove it was a waste of time. Then he had to deal with the ego of the person who was proved wrong. And that would be another 3 days or more before they could work on a level emotional field. The entire process of human interaction seemed disconcerting, but he did enjoy the inefficiency. One night, after all the other researchers had left, he sat thinking without distraction and formed his own idea as a solution. He wrote it down quickly and then spent the entire night in the office creating a presentation of the biochemical model that could, in theory, cure cancer. His fellow researchers saw it the next day and, while he slept at his desk, brought it to their department head. They explained that, on paper, the idea was brilliant because it would allow a prion introduced into the bloodstream to alter a human immune system to seek cells that produce telomerase, which immortal cells produce once their proto-oncogenes had become activated. The immune system could then treat the tumors formed by immortal cells as though they were other than the body, and hence eliminate the cancer regardless of what stage it was in. The downside, though, was that the immune cells would, by creating the protein chain that sought telomerase, have a byproduct of botulism, which would build up extraordinarily fast and kill the person in a most horrible manner. Still, it was a way of thinking that the other researchers had not explored, and so they were given the task of finding a way to genetically allow human cells to be immune to botulism. Stefan, while not told of the effects of his theory, was transferred to another project. He figured it was best not to think about it, but entered into the manufacturing department with his focus on whatever task was assigned to him. He was put to work on the research in the creation of a non-toxic food preservative that could revolutionize the canning industry, and he diligently worked long hours, eventually coming up with a chemical formula that could allow food to remain edible for years without refrigeration. Yet, manufacturing the preservative would also create a substance that would proliferate through the air and block the photosynthetic capabilities of all plant life, functionally destroying all plants on Earth in a matter of months. With a growing fear, management moved him to another project and cut his hours. He was given a greater salary so he would not suspect anything, and Stefan rolled with it and tried to enjoy life. It was during his next project that he met Clara. One of his co-workers was friendly enough to invite Stefan out for drinks with he and his girlfriend, and unbeknownst to Stefan, Clara was invited along. The attempted setup was a success, as Clara and Stefan found conversation to be simple and enjoyable. Clara, a corporate accountant with a quiet demeanor, seemed content with the long, loquacious ramblings of Stefan, which very few people could follow or understand. They went on numerous dates to movies and restaurants and became more and more physical in the expression of their intimacy. Clara mentioned after their fourth date that she was a virgin, and Stefan responded with a care and dignity for her that was only barely present before. 6 months into the relationship, after he had been moved from the fungicide project at work, wherein he formulated a compound that would have killed all fungus, yet if mixed with water would create a base of such pH that it could theoretically dissolve any substance it came in contact with, to the Secure Weapons Development Project. Clara bade him to enter her apartment that was illuminated with candles and permeated with soft and sensuous music. She then carefully played out the steps that she required of herself to give her virginity to him. As gently as he could, he followed her direction, and they had sex. If love was made, it was shadowed by Stefan's nagging doubt about her virginity. He did not ask her directly, but he did wonder. Over the course of time, he began to build resentment towards her behavior, and the fact that she would hold against him on occasion the fact that she had given her virginity to him in order to provide proof of her devotion to him, a devotion that would logically require greater devotion and care from Stefan, lest he be an uncaring male who would steal the virginity of a woman. That resentment was strange to him, because he did not think himself to be one who would care if the woman he was with was a virgin. What he did care about, however, was the extent of that woman's honesty. That set of thoughts blossomed into notions that she could be cheating on him, and those thoughts were articulated to his psychologist and, on one occasion, his psychiatrist. Sitting in the driver's seat of his car, he shakes off the memories and turns the key. With the engine roaring to life, he coasts along the blacktop towards his apartment. His mind thinks about his recent transfer at work. 2 days earlier, he submitted his research project to the head of the Weapons Development Department. The company held a government contract and was working to develop a device that could stop an inbound missile in the air. His idea was a weapon that could disperse a sheen of molten metal into the oncoming path of a missile, effectively creating a wall in the air upon which the missile would impact. Brilliant as it was, the instant dissipation of heat from the molten metal would, in most circumstances, cause an erratic new weather pattern that the company's meteorologists called a storm of fire that would ignite any gas into a state of plasma. With the air on fire, the entire world would burn in a matter of minutes. And that would be the end of life. Again, this side effect of his idea was not made known to him, and the president of the company decided they should try giving his immense, albeit destructive intellect a rest. He was transferred to a sub-department that would allow him to oversee the shipping of a new chemical fertilizer by plane to Phoenix, Arizona. He would also be given 4 weeks paid vacation upon his arrival. The general consensus of the executives was that, with some rest, Stefan may be able to continue his innovative work and stop forming ideas that, if actualized, could destroy the world. It was recommended he visit Sedona, Arizona, for starters. He had gone to Clara's apartment that night to watch a movie with her, intent on asking her to go with him. He found himself very agitated and easily annoyed by her tone of voice, her choice of words, and her general temperament that expected him to cater to her every whim and want. He made a comment, and she was offended. He decided that if she was going to be the woman he would want as a lifelong partner, he would need to clear the air between them of his doubt. And so, after directly accusing her in a manner that, in retrospect, seemed less than cordial about her virginal state prior to their having had sexual intercourse, he found himself driving home to his apartment. He exited the car and walked into his apartment. He went through his routine of winding down, and with a strange serenity, he lay on his bed and began drifting to sleep while reminding himself that he had an appointment with his psychiatrist tomorrow for a refill of his prescription. He discovered, in the days that followed, the messy demise of his psychiatrist.